So hello and welcome to today's panel on Future-Proof Your Marketing, hosted by George Mason University Center for Retail Transformation. My name is Dr. Gautam Vatkepat. I'm the director for the Center for Retail Transformation, and it's delighted to host over 100 participants and 5 amazing panelists in what looks like it's going to be a super fast-paced conversation on the future of marketing. But to get to the future, we'll start with the present. I'm going to take just a second to do some housekeeping. If you have any questions, feel free to post that in the chat box. I can see a lot of hellos. Hello and welcome everyone from different parts of the world and from the US. And we'll try to answer the questions as they come in. But without further ado, let's go ahead and meet our amazing panelists who have taken time to join us from different parts of the US and from different parts of the world, actually. So without further ado, let's get things going. Alex, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Gautam, for having me here. I'm Alex Genov. I head customer research and marketing insights for Zappos.
Very nice. Welcome. Thank you for joining. And now Bjorn from Germany. I think you're in Germany right now.
Exactly. So I'm Bjorn Ratte. I'm heading the digital experience for T-Systems. It's a German-based company with offices around the globe. And yes, I'm located in Frankfurt, Germany, and I'm happy to join this conversation today.
Wonderful. Emily. Emily, you're on mute.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am Emily Raquel. I am the co-founder and CMO of Lapri, the leading platform helping retailers source pre-owned luxury wholesale. Excited to be here.
Thank you for making time. And saving the best for last, Catherine.
Hello, thank you, Gautam, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Catherine White. I lead the federal part of the business for IBM as it relates to us working across all different partnerships. And so I'm very B2B focused, but I'm also on a number of small business boards and also part of the Dean's Council for Mason's Business School and working with Exec Ed at Mason. So it's great to be here.
Wonderful. So without further ado, let's get going. I have received more questions than I've ever had when I hosted a panel before. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time. I'll jump right into it. And let's start off by lessons learned from the pandemic. What can people, small businesses, larger businesses, what can we learn from the pandemic that is here to stick? Not the things that are changing across time. And Alex, you're the market research person, the insights person. Let's start off with you.
Sure, Gautam. Be happy to kick this off. Actually, my background is in experimental social psychology, so I can speak a bit as a psychologist more than a marketing person. And I would say that I think one thing that was a takeaway from me is that we need to take the headlines with a grain of salt, right? Everybody was talking about the pandemic will change everything, the consumer will be changed forever. So to me, if you really understand consumer psychology, you'll know that some things will remain the same because our brains developed over tens of thousands of years. And they're not going to change over the course of a couple of years. So some things will remain the same. And of course, some behaviors and some attitudes will change. So it's really key to double down on understanding consumers and customers as human beings instead of just numbers. And in terms of marketing's role in that, I would say that too is very important to really try to provide this balance of understanding customers as humans versus just employing algorithms and focusing on big data.
Yeah, and ultimately marketing is about human connections and enabling that human connection. So focus on the humans is very important. And some habits don't change. Beyond your thoughts, what have you learned from the pandemic?
Well, I'm a digital marketer by heart, so I really love digital marketing. And suddenly, due to the pandemic, I got all the budget because everything was digital now, no events anymore. no out-of-home media anymore. So this was the learning. And the learning as well was that every digital marketer got the budget. So suddenly all the channels were full of information. We had a high density of information on social media, on every digital channel. So the challenge was, and I still think is, that we need to get through this density of information, and we can do this with creative marketing for human beings, as you said, Alex. So I think the learning now is we still need to be creative, also in this post-pandemic time.
It's a great point, like the amount of the information overload that we're facing these days, and how do you actually stand out in the clutter? It's amazing. Emily, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually in an industry where we were growing very rapidly, the resale industry, luxury resale in particular. And during the pandemic, it only accelerated that growth. And so, with that in mind, the industry background as well with marketing, there was a large accelerated shift. We've spoken to the physical to digital experience. We used to do consumer marketing. Now we're business to business, B2B. So I'll speak to both consumer facing and B2B. From the consumer standpoint, during the pandemic, consumers have shifted. They become more conscious. They're more informed than ever. And so being authentic and having authentic voice sounds so cliche, but it is important. Gone are the days where consumers can be told what to buy. They actually want to see value. They want information that's pertinent to them, that's useful, rather than just the push and the push of sales. And so for this, it really means for brands, it's more important than ever to stay true to their core values and mission statement, because transparency leads to trust. And that's what we're trying to build with customers. I think I saw a survey somewhere that 82% of consumers are choosing to buy from brands that stand for a greater mission and purpose. And I know businesses are thinking about this now, and it's become more a priority. But I think where we are today and where the future of marketing for consumers, at least, is really committing to those purpose-driven missions and actually showing results from them. And then on the B2B side, the business to business side, conferences used to be, well, it's coming back almost full force now, but it's not quite there yet. Used to be one of the dominant channels for marketing for B2B. During COVID, obviously that became virtual. What it was good about the virtual conferences were many brands were able to get more airtime. Maybe they couldn't get that much being, physically in a space, maybe they didn't have the budget, and being virtual allowed some brands to get more airtime. But the challenge continues to be the human connection. So, as you've heard, marketing and B2B marketing especially has to be more creative, leveraging new tech, whether it's, social media trends or live webinars or one-on-one consultations to really get attention of the business audience.
Wonderful. We'll get back to that human touch in a second, Alex. So stay tuned. Catherine, what's your thought? You've run it across the gamut. What's your thoughts on the lessons that stick?
Look, I think the pandemic caused a blurring between sales and marketing, where I think that intersection will be forever changed. I was actually working with Bjorn at the time of shifting the money to digital. But I think digital and digital transformation got the prioritization that it needed in many organizations. And maybe it wasn't a choice, but still it became center, and that has not changed, even though we're still dealing with some of the implications of that. But I think underneath it was also this notion of we can do amazing things in a short period of time when we work together. And that notion of what it takes to drive organizational change, again, has forever changed our mindset in terms of how we think about what's possible going forward. So those are the three lessons I took.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And we're going to talk about those three lessons in a little bit more detail. But the theme that I heard from here is outside of the growth of digital is the importance of human connection, right? And I just want to go back to Alex, to your point of, right, some humans take a while to change. So what are those behaviors that you have seen that have changed? What's the transition so that people can actually take that and apply that learning to their businesses?
Right, great question, Gautam. I would say we have to look at both behaviors and attitudes, right? Because it's when you look at just behaviors, you don't know what motivates behaviors. You don't know what drives them. So you need to understand both. The behavioral part, but also the motivations, attitudes, beliefs, systems, and so on. Personality and beliefs and attitudes are harder to change, and some of them are hardwired in us. So I'd say one change that we really saw with Zappos, which is it's an online only business, was during the pandemic, of course, when physical stores closed. Consumers that never shopped for shoes and clothes in the past online, they shifted to online because they didn't have a choice. So before the pandemic, there was about 30% of the US population of consumers that would only shop for shoes and clothes in the store. And these are probably the same people when I used to work for TurboTax that would only go and buy the digital CD to do their taxes. They wouldn't use the online program for a variety of reasons, mistrusting technology and so on. So these people really went online. And then we saw after the pandemic, a lot of them returned to shopping in stores. But I think the proportion of consumers that started answering the question, where do you shop for shoes and clothes? The proportion who said both online and stores was then elevated significantly. And I think that would stay with us.
Yeah. I think it's ultimately meeting the customer where they want to be, right? And that's the main thing. So when we started promoting this event, a lot of the emails came with regards to how do we actually spend, where do we allocate budgets in marketing in today's constrained times? And let's kind of talk about that, right? There's a lot of uncertainty about the customer in today's world. We need marketing to build those connections. Bjorn, you kind of kicked us off by saying that you've seen a growth, and Catherine, you said the same thing. There's a growth in digital marketing, maybe more than ever, but there's also a lot of noise, right? So in that context, how do marketers actually stand out from the clutter? I heard creativity, but is there ways to actually stand out, tips that you can provide for the audience from your perspective, from your vast experiences? Bjorn, maybe we'll kick things off with you.
Yeah, you're right. The times of uncertainty are real. So we have inflation, we have maybe a recession, we have a war in Europe. So it's not easy at the moment. And I think brands can help here to give a little guidance. So I would say we need to invest in branding, even if I'm a digital marketeer and I'm really performance driven. I think we need to invest in branding. And this is not only the company branding, also a kind of personal branding. I think both will participate or benefit from each other. So if we have a B2B company and we invest in the seller, in the marketing people, that they are more active on social media and build up their own personal brand, the brand will also benefit from it, and vice versa. Because as Alex said, people want to talk with people, that we are human beings. We want to talk with human beings. So if we do it, we invest all in our people, we invest in trainings to be more active on social media, to be more visible, and talk with the clients directly. So my both investment areas would be branding and personal branding, investing in the employees.
We have a question in the chat, but before that, I heard you say branding and performance marketing, right? We had a Wall Street Journal that just talked about performance marketing being the big thing. What's the difference between the two, and what's your take across the board? What's your take on this?
For me, the difference is that performance marketing, you have a short-term goal. So I want to reach end of the month a certain amount of leads or of order entry or of sold items. And branding is more really from a long-term perspective, that they invest in my brand, that they build up trust with my clients, that they can imagine what my brand is standing for or stands for. So this is for me the difference to the time perspective.
Yeah. Any thoughts from anyone else in the panel on branding versus performance marketing, the buzzword?
But there have been studies, I can't quote the specifics of it, on, you know, the influence of short-term outcomes with consistency in brand spend. So I don't see them as separate. I see them as interrelated, and that we need to have clear outcomes against what we're doing. I mean, we are measured on outcomes and our contribution to the business. And so to the degree that we frame that up, and I'll call that performance marketing. I mean, the other piece around data is the analytics to say which metrics should we be looking at that have the impact on the outcomes that we care about. Because we can also drown in the KPIs if they're not driving action for us. So I think performance marketing has that mix right. So A, it's, as Bjorn said, across the marketing mix, but B, tunes us into the outcomes that matter with the analytics that support that.
Yep. And so I'm gonna double down on that point that you just said. There is a plethora of KPIs out there. Let's go around the room and actually, Catherine, you can kick us off on this. What KPI should you be? Like, there's so many of them that my head spins. What should you be looking at? Any tips from all of you? And I'm going to ask each of you. You're not going to stay quiet on this one. Catherine,
Well,
you can kick
I'm
us
going to
off.
give a broad guidance, and I'll let my colleagues add some details. But I always said I wasn't interested in KPIs. I was interested in KPAs. Because if I wasn't taking an action from the indicator, I didn't need to be looking at it. And then I use the analytics to help me say which of the elements that I'm looking at had predictive value. So then I got rid of the ones, or I looked at them at a different frequency at least, that weren't helping me take the corrective action as a result of that. So I think we're obliged to take a step back and look at the so what of the metric before we have too many in our performance assessment.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the distinction between KPI and KPA, KPA being key performance actions, I'm assuming. That's something I'm going to use. Emily, your thoughts on metrics that matter?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in addition to all the general KPIs or KPAs that people use, obviously traffic, new users, bounce rate, time on site. For us, particularly since we're a B2B platform, MQLs is the most important marketing qualified leads, because it leads to conversion, which is another KPI, to application, and then within our funnel, application to onboard to first purchase, and so on. And so we have a combination of both acquisition KPIs that we're measuring and then actual engagement on the site KPIs.
It almost sounds like the way you framed it, Emily, is that you have to really understand your customer journey, and you have
Absolutely.
tied to Catherine's point, you have KPAs that measure each element of the journey. Alex, what your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Gautam, I mean, you mentioned customer journey, and I would, again, play kind of the devil's advocate here as a psychologist and say, I mean, it's business nowadays is run on numbers and on KPIs. But if we get in this mindset of a purely mechanistic world, right? We're going to tweak here something, and then the system is going to output something else. I think it's perfectly applicable to a conveyor belt or to a production line. But when you deal with human beings, it's not as clear cut. I'm a big fan of Rory Sutherland. I don't know if you've heard of him. He talks about specifically that where you deal with human beings, there's a lot of irrationality that goes on. So without investing, first of all, in understanding your customers on a deeper psychological level, understanding their motivations, understanding how they feel about a brand, which is a leading indicator of behavior, then you're going to be shooting in the dark, essentially. So, I mean, one KPI in that respect was advocated by one of the great restaurateurs in New York City, Danny Meyer. He's a big hospitality guru. And he talks about he can measure asking people what's the best restaurant, right, as a KPI. But instead, he likes to ask people, what's your favorite restaurant? So that there's a subtle but very important distinction. So understanding, I think, how these leading indicators, consumer sentiment, links to behavior, and so on, I think is incredibly important.
Wonderful. Bjorn, any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, as Emily, of course, we are measuring traffic and leads, order entry, revenue, profit at the end, but also customer satisfaction and brand awareness. These are also KPIs we are measuring regularly and try, of course, to improve them.
Well, I always teach, right? Like this, the customer mindsets, to Alex's point, that are lead indicators that lead to some behavioral outcomes. And I think it's good that you are kind of reinforcing that perspective. But I love the point that we are humans. There's a lot of irrationality to it. Just to move the conversation along and to bring in the audience question, Emily, you had talked about the fact that you work in the B2B and the B2C context. I just wanted to kind of go back to the question of where should marketers invest today, and tie it to the question that was asked, is there value in keeping interpersonal things interpersonal and not online? And how can traditional marketing keep up with this? So maybe you can start there answering the question and then give your own thoughts on where to invest marketing budget on.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of, account-based marketing, traditional marketing, and non-traditional marketing, because you have to meet the customer where they are, and they're kind of everywhere, right? And so for us, the account-based marketing is where we particularly focus. We segment our customers based on not only how they purchase, what they've purchased, but how they interacted with the site, browsing, search, abandoned cart, what emails are they opening, what are they clicking through, marrying that with qualitative data from our account managers. We have an AM team that works really closely with our customers. And so really taking the quantitative with the qualitative to meet customers where they are in the different channels. I know for when we think of traditional marketing and traditional media for B2B, it's a wide range. We meet them at conferences. We meet them on their phones with Instagram, with TikTok, with Facebook. We do some press, but we also try to meet them in non-traditional places as well. So beyond the emails, because as you know, emails, if you just focus on emails, it gets stale. It's not as engaging. People are, they may not open, they may not engage with the content that you're sharing on emails. And so we meet them in non-traditional senses. For example, we do live shows twice a week. And you don't think of a B2B company as a company that would do a live show. You usually think of consumer facing as live shows. But when we do these live shows twice a week, and we do them at lunch and we do them after hours, you get to know your customers in a different way. You're showing product in real time, you're talking and you're engaging with them, you're seeing how they interact with product. You get to know, sometimes you get to know some of their stories, that their kid just gone to college, or, they're really looking for a Neverfull bag. And so it adds a different layer of that interpersonal kind of relationship that we're building with our customers. That goes beyond the just typical B2B marketing process, and really adds a layer of excitement to any retailer that we work with, their typical sourcing process. So it's very integrated and it's very intertwined, but we do meet them in many different facets.
Yeah, I love the fact that, there's creativity in marketing, right? And it's about connections that can be enabled through those creative elements that Bjorn kind of kicked us off on. Moving forward, Catherine, you had talked about partnerships, the blurring of the line between marketing and sales and partnerships, right? And I personally believe that partnerships are a key to unlock growth during uncertain times. From your vast experience, how do people actually build those partnerships? How do they build that go-to-market strategy? We have a question on that very specific point in the chat. So maybe you can answer that as well.
Look, I think this is one of the big levers in marketing that's the most underutilized. So it's a channel, it's a go-to-market element. But if we just take partnering and break it down into a small dimension of it, I'll call it co-marketing, I think we're not effectively deploying that across the board. So for example, with another company, with a partner, one could do the same marketing activity for half the cost if each puts in the same amount, right? But it usually goes so much more than that. Or you could argue it's the same amount of money for double the impact. But I think it's a lot more than that, because your access, your touch points, your influence is likely going to be complementary to theirs. In other words, it's not a full overlap of impact. So the productivity and impact can go much higher. There's an example I'm thinking of in my own role now, where we were able to do a number of marketing mix elements together for less money, faster, for greater outcome than we would ever have done on our own. And I think that opportunity is available to all of us, and should be something that we look at, whether the environment is constrained or not, but especially in a constrained environment.
Yeah, and I also think, like, when you think of partnerships, you have access to new customers, right? Like, you have access to actually adding value. And so maybe we'll just double down on this point, and get the feedback from Bjorn and Alex and Emily. Like, any partnerships that you think of, like, how do you expand the scope? Ultimately, it's about acquiring new customers and retaining existing, right? So any thoughts on how you can form these partnerships?
Reach out. I mean, go to LinkedIn and take a look in your area for small business, and reach out to the other person and try to connect and talk about what's possible and what's not. So I think everything starts with reaching out.
Yeah. And on that issue of reaching out, is it cold calls or emails that is best for acquisitions?
No, the best, sorry to say, but the best is go on LinkedIn, search in your area, find the right person, comment on the post something that the person is knowing that you are also good in your area, and then connect, and then start up trust on LinkedIn. So I think just a cold email will not help you, my personal opinion.
That's perfect. Thank you for the pitch for LinkedIn also, Bjorn. I appreciate that.
I will
Alex,
repeat
any
it.
thoughts
I will
on
repeat it.
any thoughts on your end on this issue?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important, and I think it has to start with a mindset, right? A mindset that goes from this company is a potential competitor to this company is a potential partner, and we can work together. For me, the best example of this is from popular music, and look at now. I mean, my wife and I are big fans of Pitbull, for example, and I don't know if you're familiar with Pitbull. Incredibly successful for a guy who cannot sing, but the thing is, he partners. They all, in Latin music, they all partner now. There's nobody singing solo nowadays.
Yeah.
It's this featuring this, that, and the other artist. So I think they've realized the power of partnerships, and I think a lot of businesses can take cue from that.
I love the point, like but it is a mindset issue, and trying to get people to go away from that, hey, we are competing, to we can co-compete, right? You compete, but you cooperate as well. Is a challenge. Let's just move on in the interest of time, since I do want to get to the future aspect of things. But before we do that, Alex, you're the customer experience. You've written a book on the notion of, hey, get to know the person, not the customer. I'm paraphrasing your book now. How do we actually get to know? Ultimately, you have to know the person to build those deeper connections that will help companies coming back to you. Any tips on how companies, smaller companies, can actually do this in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I mean, to Emily's point, she talked about using qualitative and quantitative research, and it's really, I mean, part of the quantitative research in terms of big data, that's rocket science, but qualitative research, talking to people, is not rocket science. So any company can do it. You don't need you don't need PhDs, you don't need a huge team to do that. I think it's just being open to the idea of talking to your customers, be it B2B or B2C. With B2B, it's even more important because over there, it's in that context, sometimes it's silly to do surveys. It's more of an interpersonal interaction, but it's especially leaders and executives who are so focused on numbers and on scalability, to open their minds and say, okay, that may not seem scalable, but we'll do it. And I think that's where the biggest wins happen, when you do something that doesn't seem scalable instead of just dismissing it right off the bat.
And that's really tough to do though, right? Like the thinking through the scalability issue, especially when you don't think it's scalable. Let's pivot now to the future. This is the part that I'm most excited about. We have people in the room who are leading CMO programs. We have future leader programs and thought leaders across the different spectrums. So let's get to this, right? Marketing is under pressure from various different angles, not just from a performance issue, but from the perspective of how do we build loyalties at an all-time low. So people turn to marketing to try to build those connections. Now we have a lot of technology, and beyond, we've talked so much about the emerging tech. There's so much technology, so much analytics, to Catherine's point, but at the same time, it's all about connection. So where do we see marketing go in the future? Like, put on your wizard's hat and tell us where you think. And there are lots of students in this audience and a lot of small businesses, right? We need to prepare them for that future. So I'm going to start off probably kicking it off. We're just going in sequential order. Emily, why don't you give your thoughts and then we'll go around the room.
Yeah, sure. I mean, marketing continues to evolve incredibly fast. I mean, technology in particular is more and more important as we humans are more connected to devices as ever. And how do we use tech in such a way that makes marketing impactful and successful? I mean, I believe the most successful marketing leaders will place less emphasis on traditional investments for marketing and meet consumers where they are, whether that's a live stream platform, Web3, or other digital communities. I really see it evolving in a couple of ways. The first is probably like with tech, the evolution of tech and how data is evolving. We talked about data a lot, but I think the importance of tech's role in this evolution of data with AI and machine learning is more important now than ever. To be really successful in marketing, teams have to have the right talent in place, not just the right technology in place. And so hiring the right people with the right background, whether that's a data science team or a marketing team that has this experience, so you can better meet consumer demands and make relevant interactions and important interactions with your customers. I think the second is, and I come from like a strategy consulting background, so of course I'm going to say this, but we always hear this word test and learn or A/B tests and whatnot. It's been around for a very long time, but now that marketing is evolving even more quickly, it's even more important that we do test and learn rapidly, but with intention and clarity. And so we already know that the tried and true doesn't work anymore. Consumer behaviors, whether you're B2C or B2B, changes in an instant. And if businesses want to stay successful or want to be successful, they have to stay nimble. And so we know that the customer of yesterday is not the same as today. And with this in mind, like a test and learn, appropriate test and learn strategy that's with intention and with clear goals and time frame can help really businesses just learn from it. Because right now, marketing is too expensive to make mistakes. We don't have the time or the resources to make mistakes from advertising or retraining sales teams. We just can't afford it. And so that's why there's especially important for this focus to do test and learn in even better ways.
That's a soundbite in that. So marketing is too expensive to make mistakes. Catherine, your thoughts. You've led CMO programs. We're building out a CMO program here, so forth. Where do you see marketing evolve?
Yeah, I want to tell a bit of story in terms of the CMO program as it relates to Mason. There was a study that was done during the pandemic, sort of to build off of Emily's point, that CMOs were feeling an imposter syndrome, that they were sitting in their home office feeling very unprepared for what was happening. And so as I was thinking about this with a number of marketing colleagues, we really felt like we weren't creating the curriculum to help define the role for where it was going. and that too many of us, and this is the point I want to sort of land on because I don't think anyone else will cover this, we're allowing other people in the organization to define what marketing was. When you compare the role of the CMO to the role of the CFO or the CISO or the CEO or even the CHRO, you get more consistency of what that role is than if you ask, 100 organizations, whatever the number, the role of the CMO. In other words, we have not well marketed marketing. And to that end, I thought, we ought to take a step back and just go back to the basics. Why did the 4 Ps last so long? They were simple, they were easy to remember. And so I said, well, let's go back through that and say, so what's changed? At the end of the day, we still need a product, a service. There's something we exchange value for. We still need to price that. I mean, pricing models have changed, the dynamic nature of it, the analytics behind it, the data to support it. Of course, that's all different, but you still need some value exchange associated with it. Place or channel, I mean, I've already begun the argument that says, that's still super important and we haven't leveraged it completely. But I think the biggest change is in promotion, and I would recharacterize that P as personalization. And that is where I think all the data and analytics and the test and learn and all the impact and the big drivers of change has to come from. And of course, the data underpins all of this, and the new techniques under the technology to support it underpins it all. But I believe as a group of professionals, we're obliged to reposition our role and our function so that we can do the things that are important to drive the growth of the business. And this would be one of the elements, and including the curriculum and support around it, that I think it's time for us to do that.
Yeah, I love the focus on personalization, and that's a very nice transition to Alex. Right? And for personalization to happen, we need to have good customer insights, and that personalization allows for a really good customer experience. So where do you see what's the future? Like, we have all these things on CX and all that, right? Where do you see us heading? How do we build that ultimate customer experience that gets people coming back for more? And where does market research go in the future?
That's the $64 million question, right? It's so I think predicting the future is hard, right? I did order a crystal ball on Amazon to prepare for this, but it didn't come in time here, so I have to wing it here. But I mean, who knows? Technology changes so quickly, so rapidly. I don't think we know what's coming. But one thing I'm absolutely clear about, and I'm absolutely certain, is that if we start with the technology, if we get fascinated and enamored by and blinded by this, and start with the technology and then figure out how to use it, we're going to go down the wrong path and things are going to get very wrong very quickly, right? Even now with ChatGPT, everybody is fascinated by that. There's almost like this frenzy around it. And now people are talking about soon you're not going to know if you're talking to a human or a robot, which may or may not be a good thing. So one thing I'm sure about is if we start with the technology, we're going to be in trouble eventually. So we need to balance that with really understanding what we're trying to do, which is understand customers, help them. And in terms of personalization, I can speak to retail technology. Almost 95% of it, if not more, is just best guess recommendations. These are algorithms based on averaging people. And I can do a whole hour stand-up here of what happens when you average people. I can talk about 2.4 children, being married, having 2.4 children, and on like this. Or the statistician who had his head in a hot oven and feet in a block of ice, but on the average, they felt just fine. When you start averaging human experience, things get absurd pretty quickly.
I love that. Yes, I always try to say, like, understand, to your point and your book, understand the person, not the averages, because they do play a role, but they hide meaningful differences. Bjorn, and I never set this up in this way, but it was a very nice segue that Alex gave into some of the things that you're doing, right? You do run, if I understand correctly, like the Chief Tomorrow Officer program, or you're involved with it. We just heard ChatGPT, Metaverse being the other thing. Where do these emerging technologies go? And, to Alex's point, how do you start incorporating them while still keeping the eye on solving customers' pain points?
So I think artificial intelligence will change marketing definitely, and we are since 14 years now dealing with artificial intelligence, and we have now the tipping point that's really accelerating. So ChatGPT is just the beginning, I think, when it's now in everybody knows about ChatGPT now. So everybody tried to figure out how it works. And I think it's just the beginning for marketing. So for Persistence, we are in AI already for 2 or 3 years in marketing. So we did pilots, and I think this is the right way to do pilots and learn from it and how customers are dealing with these technologies. And then the next step for me is to give a little bit of an outlook in the future, because I love to talk about the future and marketing in the future. If we combine artificial intelligence with virtual influencers, so with virtual human beings, then we have a new kind of influencers, and they can also personalize our experience. Then they can talk with me about beer because I like beer, and maybe with Catherine about wine because Catherine likes wine. So this can be then a really personalized experience. With influencers, we don't have it today. And then the next step is we can meet these influencers in the metaverse. So we put on our VR glasses and we can talk with the influencers in the metaverse. So this will completely change the experience of the clients. And then the next step is put the VR glasses away. We have AR glasses. So we take the metaverse every time with us. When we are in the real world, we log into the metaverse, and then we will see completely different types of marketing. It's hard to imagine today what there will be in the future. So that we have a targeting. If we are in a bus, we see targeted for us different advertisement, like for you, for example. So there will be so many possibilities in the future we're not aware of today. And I think this will really exciting. And then we always need to think about how we can use it for marketing purposes. And of course, how our clients will interact with it. Will they accept it or not? We had a discussion about glasses you can put on, and then you can blur all the advertisement in the real world, so to say. So maybe this is a new development as well. But for me, the future will be bright for marketing using technology.
I always say, like, technology is neither good nor bad. It's how we use it, and it can be a force for good or a force for bad. And I think marketing, we have to deal with the attention issue with a lot of the stuff, but it can be used as a force for good, and we can figure out what's the best wine to offer Catherine. And I will say I've used ChatGPT, and it's amazing how if you do the right prompts, you prompt engineering, it can give you really good marketing plans. So there is some benefits. There's a question in the chat. What's the future of the interplay between marketing and sales? We'll just open it to all.
Yeah, I can start and give it around. So for me, the interplay is especially regarding the digital connection, that sales needs to be more visible on social media or in general in the internet, and marketing can support. So for example, if you use LinkedIn, sales are using the sales navigator and the marketing department is using the marketing access, so to say. And then both can interact. So we can market to those person who sales is involved with or to whom sales is talking with. So both needs to be interacted, and I think in the future it will be more linked together than it was in the past.
I think if we just think about it simply as the customer client journey and less organizationally, the blurring will continue. And that's really what we want, because we want to help the client or the customer through that journey in the most effective way, most of which is going to be digital. We know this.
Any other thoughts? I have a question for you that I've been dying to ask, which is that I believe in data, I believe in technology. Let me start off with that. I also believe that marketing should be used to build deeper connections and stronger relationships. At the heart of getting the right data to do the personalization, we need to have trust and transparency, to Emily's point early on in the conversation. How can marketers do that when you're inundated with marketing messages and outbound efforts? Any thoughts on how marketers can drive authentic trust and relationships in, be it a new customer as well as a returning customer? Anyone?
I'll start here. I would go back to making the parallel between using interpersonal relationship as an example, right? If you have someone you know, a friend that's always reaching out to you only when they need something, right? And asking you to do them favors and all that stuff, right? The trust will not be there for too long, right? It's going to go away. So it's the same way in business and so on. It's about relationships. And at Zappos, we measure trust in a very specific way using a statement that was developed by Fred Reichel, the Net Promoter inventor, and it basically says retailers always have my best interest as a customer in mind. And I compute a net of that the same way we compute Net Promoter Score. And in the US, trust measured that way in retail is in the -60 territory. So it's dismal, right? So basically that's what consumers are saying no, retailers do not have my best interest as a customer in mind. And so every time marketers or otherwise, if we do something, reach out to the consumer, the question is, are we taking or are we giving? And what is the balance of that? Right now, think of marketing, trust is undermined. The spam emails we're inundated with. These are marketers reaching out. A lot of it is scams, lies, right? Fraud, all that stuff. This is the bulk of it, right? And so I think that reflects on business in general.
Yeah, I want to build on that. I think there's an inherent value exchange that also has time underneath it. And I love to use the example of a ride service. You're going to give your location and your credit card information because, the car arrives to where you are because you don't have to, deal with a transaction. That's an immediate value exchange. So I think the notion of time in that value exchange also should be factored in.
Any other thoughts beyond Emily?
Yeah, I think to Bjorn's point about the brand, I think that's really important in building that trust and that interpersonal kind of relationship. It's the foundation, right? If your brand doesn't stand for something that can be valuable to the customer, you lose some of that already, that trust. I know for having a mission and having a clear vision is important, why the business exists and how it's helping customers. But also meeting the customers, and we keep saying this, where they are and what's important to them. So from my experience at Lapri, for example, email campaigns, the best performing are not the ones that are new arrivals on our B2B platform. It's actually things like how to navigate the pandemic. That was like one of our best performing emails we've had in the beginning of 2020. Here's how to apply for loans with the government. It was not pushing sales. It was meeting where our small business and retailers were at that time, and with information that's going to be helpful to them. And to this day, our best performing campaigns on social media and email are the ones that are informational, that are pertinent to them, that build the trust, that we're not just pushing product, that we're there to help their business and help these business owners grow.
To Alex's point. Bjorn, any last thoughts?
Well, I think often if you can trust a company or person if something went wrong. So if the company then interact in the right way, I think you build up trust and you have a longer relationship. And one important thing is to take care of the data of the customer. If something went wrong or will go wrong with the data, then you have a real issue. So I think this is a good way to build trust.
Yeah, so service failure and service recovery is critical ways to build trust. We had a couple of questions in the chat and emails that I'm receiving about what tips would you give both small businesses and people starting their career. So maybe we'll start with small businesses and then move to end up on the note of tips for students. What skills should they have? So tips on for small businesses when it comes to marketing. Any last thoughts? And Catherine, you can kick us off.
I'd yield to Emily on this. I think you're in a much better position than I am to answer.
I mean, for small businesses, I saw the question in the chat, but I don't think there's just one channel or one way to do it. And it's different for every business. And so you're gonna have to test and learn. I love that saying, but you're gonna have to do it in multiple channels in multiple ways, whether that's via LinkedIn DMs, to Bjorn's point, creating partnerships there, or it's meeting customers with different emails or social media. It's meeting them, and I think what was the saying? Like there's at least like 5 or 6 touch points before you like close a customer.
14.
What's 14? There we go. Yeah, I think there's really, you have to try different channels really to meet the customers where they are for small businesses especially.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I can underline what Emily said. So as she said, try, learn, test and learn, reach out to others, partner, maybe location-based services if you're a really small company or a really small business, might-wise.
Yeah. Let's then pivot to just the future for like, there is a good audience who is students in this group mix. So what, and there was a question, what advice do you have to marketing majors? What skills should they develop? And I'm just going to open it to all of you to guide them and inform them on what things to do to better look, to improve their CV.
Maybe I can start because it's the same thing I always tell my daughters. You can't beat the machine. So it makes sense that you invest in something that's more creative, be empathic, learn languages, learn different cultures. I think this will help you in marketing in the future more than just think about how an algorithm will work. I mean, it's great to understand how an algorithm will work, but if you want to be successful, you need to be more creative from my point of view. And if you want to be hired or successful in marketing later in a company, build up your personal brand now. Because if I hire someone, I Google them, well, Google this person, and if I find nothing, then I'm not sure if they're the right person for marketing. Maybe for an FBI agent or CIA agent makes sense, but not for marketing. So try up to build a personal brand now, write articles on LinkedIn, build up your own blog, make videos on YouTube, talk about marketing. This will help you.
Yeah, and actually just then came a question about personal brands, Bjorn. So maybe I'm going to pause here and just give you the floor one more second to see how you can build that personal brand for people who are just coming up or building that, right?
Yes, as I said, so build up your own website, your own blog, then write articles on LinkedIn, reach out to persons who are already in this business, talk with them, post underneath there or comment underneath their posts, go to conferences, show up, make pictures when you're on the conference, post these pictures. So there are a lot of ways that you can be more visible, not only on LinkedIn, also other social media channels. If you feel better on Instagram, build up your personal brand on Instagram. But always think about have a multi-channel strategy, because if you only are on one channel, and imagine you would be on, or you build it up your brand on Google Plus, bad for you, because Google Plus is now closed. So think about a multi-channel strategy, but think about your primer channel, and this could be Instagram, could be LinkedIn, whatever.
Yeah, to sort of underline Bjorn's point, like Google yourself, would you hire that person?
Yeah.
And if not, take the actions to change whatever mirror that puts up. I'd go a step further. I mean, I agree with all what Bjorn said. I would say get great internships. So that the prerequisite is, you've done what Bjorn said. Do great work when you get those internships. I mean, really make an impact in what you're doing. And then I always say, take the job for the job after that. What additional doors does it open for you? Those are the 3 things I would keep in mind, given that you have your visible brand available to those that are considering you for internships.
Yeah, I agree with Catherine. Like the internships is especially important, I think, especially if you're starting out your career in marketing. I mean, be willing to do the hard work, the long hours, especially if you're new to an area. I think about the days when 2 decades ago when I was at Columbia Business School, and there was not one semester where I didn't intern. And that was because I had been in financial strategy consulting and I wanted to go into retail. And so every semester I interned at a different luxury brand house to really give me the exposure and the connections, I made during business school, outside business school hours, because that time was invaluable. And so that network and the willingness to learn and do the hard work is really important. And then you asked about, if they should have I saw in the chat, if they should have a minor in something. One of the things I look for my marketing team is, a person that is very, has like it's just kind of like a broader than just marketing. And so maybe they have hobbies that are interesting. Maybe they took a minor in data science, which I love, by the way, seeing on resumes, or psychology, right? And so seeing that they're more than just, a marketing major, but they have interests outside, they have a minor in something else, in addition to the internships, really great, presents a great resume.
Wonderful. Alex?
I mean, I agree with everything that was said. I think Bjorn's point about soft skills, that's going to be very important. And having a broader outlook, study liberal arts, because I'm still waiting for somebody to start promoting artificial empathy in addition to artificial intelligence. We got enough artificial intelligence, just we need a bit more artificial empathy, if you ask me.
I love that artificial empathy. Let's try to work on that. We have a couple of questions more in the chat. And since we're talking about students, let's just stick with the topic. Is there any graphic design a good addition to a marketing major? Any thoughts from anyone in the panel?
Well, I can tell for my own. So I applied for a university for art. So my career started with this. They denied my application, so I did economics and marketing. But maybe yes, it's a good combination to do it.
I know on my team we have marketing team members who do have graphic design, and it comes in really handy when you're creating an email campaign and your main email person is out sick, and they can tap into do something like that, or even helping a small business client with some advertising for signage for their store. And it helps with social media too, creating great infographics, engaging content. So yeah, I think it is a good addition to a marketing major.
Yeah. And so we're at time, and Alex had to just get off the call. There's just one question in here, and if you don't mind entertaining that question, someone in the audience, which is that building a personal brand, does that turn off? Can a personal brand be used to build your company's business? Do people get turned off? And maybe Bjorn, you might be the best suited to answer that.
If you're a founder at the moment, you are the brand of the company. So yes, it makes absolutely sense that you invest in personal branding and in the branding of your own company at the same time, because you are the person who go to the investors and not the unknown brand. So build up your personal brand. Makes sense.
All right, so we're at.
I agree with Bjorn.
Everyone agrees, so that's good. We are at the hour, and I want to be respectful for all of your time. Thank you so much. We had actually 130 odd people attend this, so thank you for taking the time to participate and share your experiences and expertise. I appreciate it. This will be the first of many of these panels, so thank you, and we'll look forward to having you back here at some point.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.